Hi, I'm Nick Coons here with the Libertarian Solution YouTube videocasts, and thank you for tuning in today. I got an email from a listener here that I'd like to answer. There's a question on it. He writes in, "The American Revolution began with much less government interference and provocation than we have now. Hypothetically, of course, how do we know when it's time for a new quote-unquote revolution? When is it time to literally start shooting politicians?" Now, I'm not sitting here fuming with a gun in my hand, but laws don't matter to the politicians. How much longer should they matter to me? Well, I guess, kind of a side note, laws probably shouldn't matter to you at all, other than you obey them because if you don't, the government will make you obey them or will do things to you. That might be the only reason to obey laws. Of course, there's another set of criteria for determining what actions you should take. Probably not really the gist of your email there, but I guess really, I think that's kind of the wrong approach. And I know you're not sitting there waiting with the gun loaded in your hand and you say like, oh, when's Nick going to give me permission to shoot politicians? I know that's not where you're going with it. But I think the whole idea that we would violently overthrow the government is probably not the right approach for it. And, because freedom is about nonviolent solutions to problems. And so you wouldn't want to go ahead and say, well, we're going to kill all the politicians and use violence against them so that way we can implement our nonviolent solutions. That would kind of be a contradiction. I don't think people would think that we have much credibility that way. So we need to make sure that we're consistent with the idea of nonviolence. Now, going with violence generally takes us in the wrong direction, and you kind of hinted at that in your email. And now, in your email, you said the American Revolution began with much less government interference and provocation than we have now. Absolutely correct. In fact, there was more government interference shortly after the Constitution was put in place. Our government grew pretty quickly there at the beginning, and started doing things beyond what the British government was doing to the colonies. So the idea of using violence to overthrow a government, that we're going to have some kind of better system after that, generally doesn't work too well. I mean, think if we were to let's say there was this country that was 1,000 years backwards, and our military went in there, and they had slavery. So our military went in there, and we obliterated the institution of slavery, so everyone was free. Then we walk away. Well, people still have the mindset that slavery is the right thing to do. We didn't change their mind. All we did was we forced them to stop doing it. We didn't change their mind about the problem. So they're going to rebuild the institution of slavery. It's not going to go away. The same thing happens if you violently overthrow a government. If you force people to do things and you haven't changed their mind about what they should do, then they're going to keep doing what they do once the force is removed, once the violence is removed. So you can't overthrow the government and then expect freedom to come out the other end. It's not going to happen. You have to change people's minds. That's really the right way to do it. So you need to spread ideas about freedom. You need to convince people that nonviolent solutions actually work, that there are nonviolent solutions to problems that are out there. I mean, right now we're in the system of, oh, government takes care of this, government takes care of that, and as long as people think that way, that's how it's going to be. So you need to change people's minds. You need to spread the ideas out there. And there's really two possibilities. The ideal solution, of course, is that we spread the ideas to enough people, and they spread them to more people, and they spread them to more people, and eventually people just stop turning to the government for solutions. People aren't looking to the government to go invade that country or make these people stop doing what they're doing. We have other ways to deal with those things. So government will just end up fading away. Unfortunately, I think the more realistic solution, or more realistic prediction rather, is that governments are going to collapse financially, and that's kind of the same result as collapsing violently, because nobody's mind has changed. People, it's going to rebuild in some form or another. So the reason to spread ideas, the reason ideas matter, is because if we don't understand ideas or history or anything like that, we're going to end up repeating a lot of that stuff. If we understand that nonviolent solutions can work, if the government ends up collapsing financially, then what comes out of that could be a better solution. It could be a more free solution. So whether the government's going to stick around for a long time, or it's going to collapse financially, or it's going to collapse violently, or however it's going to happen, it is going to happen in some way or another, because governments always collapse. They're never sustainable. That we spread the correct ideas, so that way on the other end of that, people are building a system of freedom on the other side. So we have private solutions to things. We have voluntary cooperation, because that ends up being what's being in everyone's self-interest. Now, to someone who's not familiar with these ideas, of course, that sounds a little crazy. It's like, oh, there's evil people, there's stupid people. We have to have, this government or that government or some kind of, forced solution in place. I'm like, well, really don't. But it takes a long time to get there. It's kind of like if you don't know anything about quantum physics, you don't even know what it is other than just some weird science thing. Someone trying to explain to you the variations of spins of subatomic particles isn't going to make a lot of sense. You really need that underlying framework. So that's kind of the job that we have to try and make ourselves more free, is to spread these ideas, if that's what we choose to do. But doing it violently is never going to work. It's not going to work. I mean, violence at best can be used legitimately in imminent self-defense or in defense of someone else, but not I'm going to shoot you because I don't like what you're doing, and after I shoot you, we're going to have freedom. Probably not the best approach. I think spreading the ideas of nonviolence and nonviolent solutions to problems is really the way to go. Hopefully I've given you some answer on your question there. And of course, if there's anything else, feel free to visit libertariansolution.com. Of course, that applies to everyone. We always are interested in emails with questions that we can answer. And don't forget to tune into the show, the podcast. It's all right there on the website at libertariansolution.com. Thanks a lot.